G'day everyone, welcome back to another Audiovisual Distributors Tech Insight. My name is Justin. Today we've got something a little bit different for this Tech Insight, and that's we're going to be talking about AVPro Edge's Bullet Train 18 gig and 48 gig AOC HDMI cables, so your active optical cables. Now obviously the 48 gig AOC cables here from AVPro Edge are a little bit different to others because internally they utilize Clearline's SSF fiber, which is stronger, safer and faster to terminate in traditional forms, but they've decided to put it into their AOC 48 gig and 18 gig HDMI cables. Now there's a major benefit to this. Now let's say you've installed this long distance HDMI cable, they make them up to 100 meters, and let's say you might need to use different types of technologies on the end of it in due course. And that means cable install for 5 years, but the technology may have outgrown. So let's say we need to add in now complex fibre optic endpoints. Well, the good thing about the AOC 48 gig fibre optic cables here from Bullet Train is that we can cut the ends off and we can terminate the Clearline fibre that's internal. And we're going to just do that today. But first of all, let's have a bit of a look at the Clearline SSF fibre and why it is so different to everything else. So let's get started. Okay, so how different is Clearline to traditional fibre? Let's take a look at this image here. This is a standard fibre optics in general. So you've got your 125 micron core right here, then you've got a 250 micron hard acrylate, which you normally have to scrape off that glass, which then it gets a little bit dangerous. Clearline have changed how things are done here, so what they've done is they've reduced their glass cladding, which is located here, down 10 microns less than what it normally should be, and they've put it in a proprietary polymer to increase it back up to 125 microns, which makes it so much stronger than any other fibre in the market space. So this is why Clearline has been the choice for the AOC Bullet Train cables. So there you have it, Clearline fibre. It's pretty awesome stuff. The SSF, for stronger, safer, faster, is what that stands for, and that's obviously there for terminating Clearline in the world of fibre optics that you would normally use it in. So you can see why Bullet Train have put Clearline SSF fibre inside their 18 gig and 48 gig active optical cables. Now, well, obviously we're talking about these in detail, so these cables also have low voltage systems on board as well to deal with those fickle little devices that really don't have the grunt to power these particular cables in general. So they really have sort of ticked the box on all attributes and where these can be used. But because we're looking at these enhanced frame rates, you know, from where we were dealing with 60 frames per second up to 120 frames per second, and God forbid we'll be looking at 240 frames per second in the near future, you can see that bandwidth here is extremely important. And obviously with the variable refresh rates that have been going on as well, you know, these cables can pretty much cater with everything you need in relation to that. They also deal with your ARC and enhanced ARC modes and all these attributes depending on the length of the cable that you desire. And resolutions, 4K to 8K, and we're also looking at 10K down the track. So fibre optics is definitely going to be your best friend. And the Bullet Train AOC cables will be able to accommodate your every wish in relation to that. Now, another cool thing to mention, obviously, about the Bullet Train AOC cables as well, they're all ISF certified. So for color accuracy and performance, everything is ticked. They're a certified cable. And if you know who ISF is, well, they really know their stuff. So you're buying a very good quality, high bandwidth HDMI cable that will definitely do the job from anything from 8K home theater to these fancy games machines we're dealing with today, or if you just want something there that essentially, it's hard to say, but let's say future-proof, because we can also cut the ends off of these and terminate the fibre optics. That's what we're going to do in this video. So it really does tick all the boxes. So I guess what we're going to do right now is get stuck into doing exactly that. Let's cut the end off of this active optical AOC cable here from Bullet Train and put a Clearline LC or SC connector on it, and you'll see how easy that is to be done. So let's get stuck in. All right, what you see here in front of me is the Bullet Train SSF AOC fibre optic HDMI cable. It's pretty straightforward. Obviously they've all got metal ends, they're very much so reinforced, obviously fantastic bending index. For basically an 18 gig or a 48 gig cable, there was no difference in the physical attributes of this. So as you can see here, they're quite easy to put into installations, either in conduits or through walls, etc., because they're still very pliable. Now, for us to do what we're going to do today, we've got one shot at this essentially. So once we cut this off, obviously, I'm not going to put it back on, and then we can terminate this particular AOC Bullet Train cable with an LC, or in this case, an SC connector that I have here, which is for multi-mode fibre, because that's what's internal. well in relation to the fibre optic cables. So what we can do is get stuck in with the tooling we have. So we have Kevlar shears, we have a Stanley type knife, and we have our strippers here for fibre optics, which we'll obviously use to take off certain attributes of the cable itself. And we have our obviously fibre optic cleaver here to enable us to cleave and score that glass to get us ready to put on our fibre optic connector. So let's give it a crack. So first things first, what we're going to do is do the unforeseeable, and let's cut off the end of this fibre optic cable. You'll notice here I've got a bit of a red light coming out here because I've done one side of it, so I've got a VFL going through here so you can see a lot easier for me terminating the connector. So what we're going to do now is we're going to strip off the external jacket. So let's put our HDMI end over there. We're going to grab our Stanley knife here, and we're just simply going to drag that across that external jacket like so into the end. We'll pop that away, and this is the fun part, is trying to split this open. It is quite the challenge. We might actually give it a bit of a helping hand with the Kevlar shears, like so. And what we can do now is take off and pull back that jacket that we're not requiring. So let's cut that off nice and neat with our Kevlar shears. All right. So in here, you'll see there's foil wrapping. Now in the AOC cables here from Bullet Train, there's obviously a variety of copper in there for dealing with all the handshaking processes that everything is needed, and voltages that are needed with any HDMI attributes. We're going to take that off, and then you'll notice that there's a lot of Kevlar. That's obviously for strength, and a couple of these cotton drawers that are in here as well, obviously to deal with the strength and integrity of this product. If you're choosing of pulling this in through conduits and things, all this type of stuff is necessary. So what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of all that, and we're just simply going to cut off what we don't need on those attributes, which is all that Kevlar and foil. Now from what we're looking at here, you'll notice here we've got a bunch of copper. So this is copper located all through these, so we're not going to use those, but you'll see there's a light coming out of this one. You can probably see it easier on the dark surface because I've got a VFL plugged into the other end. In here, in this grey section, is 4 Clearline SSF fibre optic fibres. So we don't need any of these copper attributes here because we're essentially going to be putting endpoints on it, so let's get rid of all of those as well. And then we can neaten this up at the end. If you had heat shrink or something, you could pop it over the end there, but for this exercise, we're not going to worry about that. All right, so from this point, we need to bring out the fibers that are inside this particular jacket. Then we will grab our Kevlar strippers. We have our 125 micron connection down the bottom here on our stripper. You may be able to see that. There's different sizes of these. This is standard industry tooling. So what we're going to do here is we're going to just click through that jacket, take that off, and here we go. We have 4 fibre optic strands of Clearline SSF fibre optic cable. Pretty neat. And that's all built into this. So we have, obviously, this is for RGB and clock for us, and everything else, all of the handshaking is done by the copper sides of these cables. So what we're going to do now is we're going to terminate one of these particular fibre cables with an SC connector here for multi-mode fibre. It can be an LC connector, it can be any connector you desire depending on your electronics. So what we're going to do now is get the one that is lit up in this case, which is this blue one. This is the one I want to terminate because I have the VFL on the other end. Now what we're going to do now is, because Clearline fibre, like I showed earlier in the video, has its own attributes with its proprietary polymer over the glass, which keeps it very safe and very flexible for us to deal with. And this blue or the brown or the green here is essentially a indication layer. So what we're going to do now is use our fingers, and we're going to strip back that soft peel indication layer, which is the blue in this case, and we're going to strip that back until it's all nice and smooth. Now you will never do this with traditional fibre, because normally you'll be using strippers like this at 125 microns and scraping off a hard acrylate. Clearline doesn't have that because they've got that proprietary polymer on there. It's perfectly safe for me to touch. It's very flexible, we can tie it in knots, it's a phenomenal product. But what we're going to do now is, because we're seeing a bit of light come back down this glass, is because it's very oily and dirty at the end, we're going to cleave this glass for us to then put it into this connector. But first things we need to do here is put on our boot. And then we would also put on here, because this now is a 125 micron fiber with this particular soft peel, it's 250 microns in size, we're going to put a build tube on there as well. So let's get that on there. Okay, so this is our build tube. It's a little piece of silicon tubing. It's quite hard to see in this particular image. I'll pop it there, you'll be able to see that there. Now that's essentially a build tube, so the collar of our connector can't break into that fiber if it moves in any direction. So the challenging part of this is obviously getting the fiber in there. Look at that, first time, wonderful. So we're just going to pull that down onto the fiber, as you can see it there, with the collar, all right? So now what we're doing, we need to now cleave this fiber optic cable at a certain length that is suitable for us to basically insert into this connector, okay? So we're just going to take off that top cover of this SC connector. So Clearline fiber optic cables, you'll notice here that there's an indication window on their connector. Now that will light up when we actually get the fiber inserted into the connector, and when it dials off, we actually have it home in the end of the connector, so that way that indexing gel in the end there will lock it all in for us. So this connector requires us to cleave it at 28 millimeters from the jacket, but in this case we don't have a jacket because we don't need it. We're going to get our cleaver, which is right here. Sorry, this is going to be a little bit hard to see because I need to see what I'm doing here. We're going to terminate this glass at a particular point at 28 millimeters that is suitable for us for this particular connector. Then we're going to score the glass. We have now cleaved that glass. Now you'll notice here we do not want to touch the end now because it's nice and clean, that particular cleave for us. So now we're going to open up our connector, open up the trapdoor on the back. We're going to insert our fiber optic cable into the connector, and what you will see here is that it will light up that window. It's quite easy to see, it's quite lit up. As we put that in, we're going to basically get to the point where the light distinguishes, then we slide that locking window forward. Hopefully you can see that there, the end of the connector is lit up quite significantly now, so we have a good connection. And what we're going to do from this point is that build tube that we had, we're going to lay that in the cable well that you can see. Sorry, it's a little bit hard to see, but once that is in, we will close that trapdoor and we're going to tighten up that back collar. Now, once we tighten him all the way up, essentially, we have now terminated a fiber optic connector on the end of a Bullet Train AOC fiber optic cable. Essentially now that can be plugged into a fiber optic device and we're transporting all the protocols from endpoint to endpoint, as simple as that. So there you have it. That there is a Clearline fiber optic connector put onto the SSF Clearline fiber optic cable inside the Bullet Train 48 gig and 18 gig AOC active optical cables, which will cater for all your resolution requirements, super performance. It's a wonderful product and it's definitely going to be sustainable for any future upgrades you may have. So let's get back in now to finalizing what we're speaking about and what you've just seen just now. All right, how cool is that? Being able to cut off a HDMI end on a active optical Bullet Train fiber optic HDMI cable and terminating it with a Clearline fiber optic connector of your choice. In this case, I've used an SC multi-mode connector. You can use an LC multi-mode or ST connector. Pretty much you can put any connector on this fiber optic cable that you desire to suit the electronics of your choice for future expansion. Now, in saying this, the AOC 48 gig and 18 gig HDMI cables here from Bullet Train are really second to none. You're dealing with the best fiber optics internally, you're dealing with extremely high quality ends on them, and the performance is fantastic. Like, you're going to be dealing with 8K, you can deal with 120 frames, you can deal with 4K, you can do anything essentially that the requirements are for this day and age. But the best part about it, there's peace of mind. So if you need to add in certain fiber optic products down the line where unfortunately 8K might not be enough, we might need to look at 10K. Well, essentially we can cut off this HDMI end, terminate it with fiber optic products just like I have here with the Clearline SSF connectors, and you're away. So it's really sustainable in the market space. It's going to do everything you desire, and they are the go-to if you're needing active optical HDMI cables. So I guess in a nutshell, if you want to know more about all of this, we have a heap of details on our website. So check out the AVD Distributors website. Here's the details below. You'll be able to download specs and details of any of the bullet train stuff you might need, or anything from AVPro Edge for that matter, and Clearline, because it's a bit of a combination here in relation to these AOC cables to make these so good. Now, if you also want to have a chat to our sales team, here's the details below. They'd be more than happy to answer any questions you have about Bullet Train, about Clearline, about AVPro Edge, or any other product that we have here in our AVD stable, because we have quite a few. And they'll be able to answer any questions you have along those lines and give you pricing, etc. And pretty much steer you in the right direction for the right product to suit your requirements. I guess I'm going to sign off. Thank you so much for taking the time here and listening to me and watching me cut off a perfectly good HDMI AOC cable and terminating it with a fiber optic connector. I hope this has been useful. I'm sure you can see the benefits of such a product. We really do appreciate your time, and I really do hope you check out our other videos as well on our AVD YouTube channel, because we've got a bunch of stuff from Bullet Train, AVPro Edge and Clearline and all the other products that we have in our stable. It's been great. Thanks again for your time. Look forward to seeing you at our next one.